Welcome back to Cards and Comics. And today I am going to be talking about something I don't spend a lot of time talking about, which is crossing cards over from Beckett to PSA. I have many videos about SGC to PSA, but none about Beckett. And that's because, in general, a majority of my collection for vintage is in PSA. And Beckett is a niche in just the modern market. So as far as crossing cards over, most of my modern cards are things like for PC, like Griffey and Trout. And therefore, I don't consider what holder they're in because Beckett holders and PSA were considered to be, for me, equally in terms of value and presentation. There was never really need to get the card from one holder to the other. Now, with SGC, and even though they've made some inroads, even losing a few grades, the crossover to PSA was worth so much more money. And I collected PSA only for vintage that it made a lot of sense to do that. So, but now with PSA coming back and having a different tier ready to go for grading, is it time to really reconsider whether or not my Beckett collection of modern cards should be crossed over to PSA? So to do that, I'm going to do 4 different cards that are highly traded. I'm going to look at 4 different sports as well.
Now, the first card I'm going to look at is the 2015-2016 Young Guns Connor McDavid. Now, I've got it in the 9.5, and looking at it, comparing it to the PSA 10. Now, I'll start with a giant caveat. BGS 10s and the black labels obviously are more expensive than PSA 10s. And so they're in the survey and they're in this analysis, but when I'm comparing and doing pricing, I'm comparing 9.5s to 10s because I think that is a reasonable expectation on a regrade. If you get the BGS 10, obviously you make more money. And so the short analysis on should I send my PSA 10 to get the BGS 10, sure, if you think you can get it. They're very hard to get. So the more reasonable answer is, can I send my 9.5 to PSA and get a 10? Now, I'm also looking at all grades from 8 to 10. So when I look at the average of all grades, which is the average of AG, you can see in 2020 to now, and so in 2020 for the Connor McDavid, the difference in price between PSA and BGS was only about 7% in all grades. And you can look at some cards like the 9, was 28%. But if you look at the 8.5, the Beckett actually was worth more. And the 9.5 Beckett was actually worth more than the PSA 10. The 9.5 Beckett was worth more than the PSA 10. So, I think that shows why the ROI, or the difference in grades and total prices between the 8 through 9.5s was so low, only 7%. Now you go to 21, that's moved to 52%. Almost 53% for all those grades. So the idea is that if you got an 8 and you cross it over to a PSA 8, you're going to make more money. Beckett to PSA, same way. And if you go across the board now, the 8, the 8.5, the 9, the 9.5 to 10, they're all more expensive in PSA. And the PSA 10 is now over $3,000 for the PSA 10 versus $1,800 for the 9.5. So getting the 9.5 into the PSA 10 is worth a lot more money now. So from that perspective, yes, it is definitely worth the effort. Now moving on to baseball, I did the Griffey Jr. because it's such a card that's moved so much volume in this card. And you can see this card actually is not gone up more from 2020 to 21. Obviously, it's virtually double. So if you take the 8s to 9.5s and PSA 10, you can see that it's double. A little bit more in 2020 in terms of 117%, but 104%, 105% in 2021. And what you're seeing there is the price correction of the Griffey cards has really been massive. And you're seeing that the cards themselves have just corrected in price, where now the PSA 10 is selling virtually the same between 21 and 20. But, the deltas there, have just really kind of disappeared, in terms of just growth in price. So in general, you can see that the PSA 9 is worth less in Beckett in 2021 versus 2020. And the PSA has gone up, just a little bit. So it's just showing that the price correction is, I think, one of the reasons why this card hasn't seen more growth between Beckett and PSA, but is an outlier. And it's what happens when you look at the data. For the Griffey, it's worth more money, but it's not, significantly more money where I'd say, like, if you didn't do it in 20, there's no more financial incentive in 21 to do it, right? So that was one that didn't show a huge value difference between 2020 and 2021. The Jordan is another outlier, so I use the Jordan because it's just traded at such a high volume. But you can see it's massively gone up in price in PSA versus 2020 versus 21. It's gone from 150% to 300% more than, which roughly relates to 4 times the value. So again, you can see $22,000 versus almost $90,000. Now, there has been virtually no BGS 10s of this card sold in 2 years. So I didn't even include it into the data set. But, just looking at a 9.5 to 10, you're going from $63,000 to $316,000. So basically that card's 5 times higher between BGS 9.5 and PSA 10. So obviously, crossing over your BGS cards to PSA across the board is a massive increase in value, no matter what grade you get. So, that is, one of those things that's just so interesting for me is that, is there going to be a point to when a PSA 9 or say a PSA 8 is worth the same as a BGS 9? I know that seems stupid, but if the value continues to kind of decline there's going to be a point to when even getting a lower grade, like going from a PSA, a BGS 9 to PSA 8.5, there's a $3,000 gap today. What if that gets down to virtually nothing, to where losing a half grade doesn't even hurt you? That could happen. This card is an outlier in terms of people just want the PSA in this card. It's really gone up quite a bit. Going to 89 score, I used the Sanders for baseball. Gosh, I'll try to cut that out. 3, 2, 1. Going to football, I used the 89 score Barry Sanders. It's heavily traded, a lot of volume, and again, you see the massive, difference in pricing on that BGS 10 to PSA. So obviously, if you can get the PSA 10 to BGS 10, you're going to make a lot of money. But that's hard to do and more unrealistic. Going from the 9.5 BGS to the PSA 10, again, you're seeing, from 2020 to 21, there's virtually the same value. It's 5% difference. So not more financial incentive, but you will see that the PSA 10 is worth about $300 more in 21 than it was in 20. And again, these are VCP numbers, and they are basically the last 4 or 5 sold. So these are pretty up to date. And so I would say that, again, financially, 127%, $186 versus $423. It makes a lot of financial sense to do it if you think you can get the grade. And I think it's something that if you're good at looking at the cards in the holder, it's definitely financially, it looks like something that's, if you can get the grade, go for it, So in summary, if I took all 4 players and their cards and I looked at 2020 versus 21, you can see that the delta with the Jordan in is massive. Between 2020 and 21, it's 283%, so almost double what it was in 2020. The delta there between the 2 grading companies. Take the Jordan out, it's a 22% increase. And so that shows that, it's going up. The gap is widening between PSA and BGS in favor of PSA. And so in general, it's going to give you a massive price increase for certain cards, especially at 9.5s to 10. But even 8s to 8s and 9s to 9s, there's some financial incentive. So am I going to start breaking out my BGS modern cards and popping them over to PSA? I think I'm getting closer and closer to doing that for some. With BGS not available for grading for new cards, I think that's going to continue to hurt its brand. At least PSA is open and grading some cards. I've got a lot of modern cards like Sapphire Otani rookies, Sapphire, Vlad Jr. rookies that I got to go to somewhere, and eventually I got to get those cards graded. And I'm, obviously going to send them PSA because they're open. But 3 or 4 years ago, I would have looked at Beckett as a viable option, and now I just don't see it as a viable option. This gap is widening between modern cards and PSA, and I don't see it going in the direction anytime soon, especially with BGS not open for business. So that's my little take here. It's a short video. Hopefully you like it. Hopefully you kind of see that, yeah, the Jordan is kind of a wild card, but even taking Jordan out, it's still getting worse and worse for BGS in terms of modern pricing compared to PSA. So hey, my take on it again at the end of the day is, I'm going to go to PSA. They're open for business, and obviously I got to send in some high dollar cards to make it worthwhile. But the value gap there is still widening. So all right, I'll see you guys next time, and hope you had a great day.